I started as president on the 1st of August last year, and I've been in university leadership for about 15 years. And what I want to talk about tonight is something I've been thinking a lot about over the past few years. And I thought this was a fantastic opportunity to try out some ideas on you, to straighten my thinking out about leadership. And it's about the hidden currents of leadership. If not invisible, the not quite visible elements of leadership, the things that really matter as a leader. Now, the world is suffused, right, with leadership science in some ways. Business schools talk about leadership. LinkedIn talks about leadership. Wherever you go, people are talking about leadership. And you are probably leaders now too, right? I mean, whether you're in a student society, the students who put on this event are leaders. Whether you're in a student representative role, whether in your mosque or your synagogue or your football club or your dance club, whatever it is, you're probably a leader in one way or another. And good leaders reflect on that and think about that. When I asked ChatGPT, produce an image of what leadership looks like, they gave me this. And I want to ask, which one is the leader? I think ChatGPT thinks it's the person on the top of the mountain. And that's something I want to challenge tonight. You know, really well-known images of leadership are often nautical metaphors, right? The captain of the ship. You chart the course. You order the people on your ship. You're looking after the passengers. You know where you're going. You're looking up in the stars. You're reading the wind. And that's a really powerful metaphor. I mean, Plato even talks about that in the Republic. He uses that as a metaphor for political leadership. And it's almost a trope of political rhetoric. But there's something missed in that story, which I think is a bit more interesting, that I want to start off with tonight. And call this the yachtsman conception of leadership. Have you ever been on a sailboat? If you have, maybe you've had this experience. I'm a very good swimmer, but I don't like boats. And having just moved to Manchester after living in Sydney for 20 years, in Sydney I had a very good friend who was a very good sailor, and he used to take me out on his boat, and I think he used to do this to scare me. But on a boat you'll hear all kinds of sounds, thwacks and creaks and groans and crashing and slapping. And sometimes when you look at an experienced yachtsperson or yachtsman, they look perfectly calm. Whereas you're asking, what is that sound? It sounds terrifying. And there are other times where you're very calm and you look at that sailor and they've got a very worried expression on their face. And that, to me, means that the most experienced yachtsman has a sense of their boat in their bones. They can literally feel it in their fingertips and their hands. They can feel the vibrations, the sort of shift of weight. They can hear sounds that should sound right in some cases and are terribly wrong in other. And this is what I mean about the hidden currents of leadership. What does it mean to be a leader who can feel the organization or the institution or the society in your bones, in your fingertips, in your hands? That's the aspect of leadership I want to talk about tonight. And I think there's sort of three principles of leadership, three principles of how you can pay attention to the hidden currents of leadership that I want to share with you. And really, when I was reflecting on this, walking over tonight, it really starts from my very first experience of being in student politics. Yes, I too was a student political hack. I noticed that often the most charismatic political leaders in our university got the least done. There was always somebody else who got things done, and they were usually the people who really understood in their bones how the organization worked. And as I've had the opportunity to take on leadership roles in different universities around the world, and finally to come here for this amazing university in the role I'm in now, I've been thinking about that. What are these hidden currents of leadership. And I think there are kind of three aspects to them. And the first I want to call the Anna Karenina principle. Now, if you don't know who Anna Karenina is, you should hopefully find out tonight. If there's nothing else tonight that you learn, hopefully it's something about Anna Karenina. Anna Karenina is the main character in Tolstoy's book, Anna Karenina. And it has one of the most famous opening lines, at least for me, in modern literature. And it goes something like this: all happy families are alike. All unhappy families are unhappy in their own way. Now, I think this is a kind of profound human truth, but interestingly enough, I think it's a profound sort of leadership truth as well. I mean, what does this have to do with leadership? I think, for me, what it means is that all institutions, all organizations have their own form of unique sadness. They have their own form of how things go wrong. And great leaders, attentive leaders, leaders who understand the sort of hidden currents of leadership, understand the unique sadness of their organizations. And they respect it, but they don't wallow in it. Now, let me be clear. Of course, there are things that do definitely go wrong and that hold back your club, your society, your organization, or indeed a university. And those things are in full view. Bad government policy, bad infrastructure, not enough resources. But often the most powerful things that can knock an organization off course are not visible to the plain eye. The norms, the cultures, the attitudes, the interpersonal relations. And I think great leaders who are tuned to those hidden currents, are able to grasp that and see that and do something about it. And it usually comes from a combination of experience and knowledge, but also failure, and reflecting on failure and thinking about why things didn't go wrong. And often the attentive leader will say, I didn't notice that. I didn't see that at the time. So the Anna Karenina principle tells us that yes, it's exciting when things go right, but the truly attentive leader is the one who understands the unique sadness of their organization. And if you haven't read Anna Karenina, then go out and buy it after tonight. It will change your life. It's probably the best advice on human experience that you can ever get. The second principle is one that some of you might be familiar in the audience. It's the second law of thermodynamics. Now, don't worry, I'm not going to give you a lecture on the laws of thermodynamics tonight, especially since I'm a philosopher. I barely know anything about it. But the second law of thermodynamics says something like this: without constant energy and attention, order inevitably descends into disorder. Entropy triumphs. In other words, you can't unscramble an egg. And what does this have to do with leadership? Well, again, I think there are two things it teaches us. One is you're only ever one step away from complete and utter disaster and chaos. And that should teach us a certain amount of epistemic humility. Just when you think everything's got right, just when you think Senate and the Board of Governors has agreed to your new proposal, and the student union loves it, things fall apart. Entropy triumphs. So the second law of thermodynamics tells us that you should never, ever take things for granted in staying the way they are. But interestingly, it tells us a second thing as well, which is that we shouldn't despair about that. It's not a bad thing. It's just in the nature of the universe that stuff breaks. And it's actually deeply problematic to think that isn't the case. And we should lean into it. We should embrace it. We shouldn't despair. We shouldn't think it means we can't do anything about it. In fact, maybe counterintuitively, it tells us that we have agency, that we can do something about it, but we should be humble. as Kendrick Lamar encourages us to be. The third principle, the seeker principle. The picture that you see there is Bell Hooks, someone who I have huge admiration and respect for. Bell Hooks was a wonderful social theorist, activist, writer, an extraordinary activist, academic, and community worker, distinguished professor. She died last year, very sadly, far too young. But when Bell Hooks was asked about, how would you define your identity? She said, I wouldn't start with my gender. I wouldn't start with feminism. I wouldn't start with my anti-racism activism. I would start with this, that I'm a seeker on the path to love. And the seeker principle tells us something, I think, which you'll all groan, right? Because it's a variation of, it's the journey, not the destination. But cliches are cliches because they often are saying something profoundly true. Let me give you another variation of it from my discipline in political philosophy. Often people think about democracy, right, as an object, the liberal democratic state. What is democracy, we say? It's the liberal democratic state. And democratization is the way we get to the liberal democratic state. But what if we flip that? What if we said instead, what really matters is democratization? It's actually the way we become democratic that is as important, maybe even more important, than the fact that we ever become democratic. And even more radically, that the way we become democratic, the way we talk to each other, the way we think about our institutions, the practices we build together, are actually the things that really matter, whether or not we ever get to that end goal of the liberal democratic state. And I think that's what Bell Hooks was talking about. I'm a seeker on the path. So a leader who is attentive to the hidden currents of leadership cares as much, if not more, about the way she leads, the way she engages with the people she's serving, as much as she thinks about the goal that she set out, the strategic plan that she's writing. The way is the most important thing to be attentive to. So I think these three principles give us a really powerful set of tools for thinking about the nature of leadership. And I think it applies at any level, whether you're the president of a country or involved in a local organization. The most powerful leaders are the most attentive leaders. So let me try and summarize it to bring things to a close. I think this gives us then three leadership mindsets that flow from these three principles, right? The Anna Karenina principle, the second law of thermodynamics principle, and the seeker principle. The first is stay attentive. Attention is the most precious, one of the most precious commodities that human beings have. When we pay attention to each other, we're giving each other a remarkable gift. And the most effective leaders, I think, observing them and watching them, are absolutely precious with their attention. It's what makes them great leaders. The second, I think, mindset, we could call this the Kendrick Lamar principle, is be humble. It's a position of epistemic humility. It's what that second law of thermodynamics teaches us. It's in the nature of the universe that things will break. It's in the nature of the universe that things will go wrong. But the appropriate response to that is not to despair, but to see it as an opportunity for growth, to see it as an opportunity for figuring out how to proceed despite that. And then the third, I think, and final mindset it gives us, which is connected to the second, is agency. Despite the fact that every organization has its unique sadness that often pulls us down, despite the fact that it's in the nature of the universe that things fall apart, great leaders always remember and recall their colleagues to the fact that we have agency over the world we're trying to shift and change. So that hopefully gives us a way of thinking about the nature of leadership. That's a bit different from what they teach in MBAs. That's a bit different from the way they talk about it on LinkedIn, and hopefully resonates with you as our future leaders. Thank you.